Appreciate members of Congress who are willing to address you all, starting with the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a bipartisan agreement. The White House deserves credit for working with Republicans and Democrats to achieve this historic resolution. The resolution does not tie the President's hands. It gives him flexibility he needs to get the job done. This resolution does not require the President to get United Nations approval before proceeding. It supports the President's effort to work with the United Nations, but it doesn't require him to seek UN approval first. If the President determines that he has to act unilaterally to protect the American people, he can, and he has the ability to do that. I think the bottom line for all of us here is we've been through this process. We've been through September 11th. We've visited Ground Zero. We've been at the Pentagon the day after. And we don't want that type of tragedy to happen in this country again. And we will do everything in our power to prevent it from happening again.
Good afternoon. Let me begin by saying that the most important issue the President and the Congress ever address is that of life and death. The first responsibility of our government is to protect the security of our nation and our citizens. In our view, Iraq's use and continuing development of weapons of mass destruction, combined with efforts of terrorists to acquire such weapons, pose a unique and dangerous threat to our national security. Many of us believe that we need to deal with this threat diplomatically if we can, militarily if we must. Every member of Congress must make their own decision on the level of threat posed by Iraq and what to do to respond to that threat. I've said many times to my caucus that each member should be guided by his or her own conscience, free from others trying to politicize the issue or questioning others' motives. In response to the President's desire for congressional support and in keeping with our constitutional responsibilities, I have worked to draft a resolution that reflects the views of a large bipartisan segment of Congress. My underlying goal in this process has been to ensure that Iraq is disarmed and to lessen the likelihood that weapons of mass destruction can be passed to terrorists. Over the past several days, I have solicited views from all the members of my caucus and have negotiated with the administration to secure a number of important improvements that reflect these views. These improvements include support for and prioritization of U.S. diplomatic efforts at the United Nations, limitations on the scope of the authorization, presidential determinations to Congress before our armed forces may be used against Iraq. These include assurances by the President that he has exhausted diplomatic means to address this threat and that any military action against Iraq will not undermine our ongoing efforts in the war against terrorism. Regular consultations with and reporting to Congress on the administration's efforts to address this threat and post-conflict contingencies in Iraq. You all know that we have a lot of differences on many issues. We disagree on many domestic issues. But this is the most important thing that we do. This should not be about politics. We have to do what is right for the security of our nation and the safety of all Americans. We're about to begin a great debate in the United States Congress. Part of the majesty of our democratic achievement of a democratic governance is that on issues of war and peace, life and death, we have entrusted those decisions not just to the President, but to the Congress as a co-equal branch of this government. We now take that solemn obligation, and I believe that when the debate is finished, we will have discharged that responsibility in the highest tradition of this country and our great people.
Mr. President, colleagues, America has always led in the cause of freedom. And now in this century, this resolution marks, I think, the most significant step in fulfilling America's history in carrying out our responsibilities. Mr. President, to you and to Prime Minister Blair, who has joined you, great gratitude is owed not only by the people of the United States, but by the people of the world for your efforts to bring to the forefront this issue and to put it squarely on the United Nations to fulfill their responsibilities and to call upon the Congress for their support. We do that here today, Mr. President, and I'm very privileged to stand here with leaders, Senator Lott, Senator Lieberman, Senator McCain, that led the 91 effort in that resolution. Mr. President, we delivered for your father. We will deliver for you. And I predict while the vote was a margin of 5 in 91, it'll be a stronger bipartisan margin this time. And as the Congress closed the ranks behind that historic debate in 91, so will the Congress close its ranks such that this nation can speak with one voice, that Congress and our President united. Thank you, sir.